Hello everyone, it's Lily, and today I'll be doing my Otome Diaries aka spoiler review on Mathis from Shuuen of Virche, Era Salvation. And as I keep on saying, this is a spoiler review or spoiler say my opinions diary thing. So if you don't want to know anything about the game or anything about the characters, this will contain every single bit of spoiler you can think of apart from CGs. So yeah, I would move on. But anyway, if you'd like to hear the plot and my thoughts on it, then keep on watching. But so Mathis, oh bless him, his route was so, it was one of those routes where I sincerely hope that he is going to be happy in the future life, whatever happens. It's just, it was so tragic. Now, my first impression of him was, oh, he looks a bit too childlike. He's a shorter character. I don't think I'll like him. Yeah. That was my first impression. And then it kind of remained that way in the common route, because in the common route he's very shy, you know, he struggles to talk to people, he stammers a lot, that sort of thing. And I don't know, I just felt kind of like I didn't really get that connection with him. But I need to play his route, obviously, so I played it. And oh my gosh, it was so grotesque. Like, I think some people find it so gross. Like, wow. So basically what happens is, after the incident that happened in the common route where the killer gets killed and the killer then gets killed by some other unknown person, Mathis becomes very depressed because the whole of his life since his brother died, he has been, you know, chasing after this killer, looking for this killer. He wanted to fulfill his revenge, and yet this killer just died and that was it. And I guess he feels like he doesn't have much of a life purpose right now, especially considering the fact that he was always the younger brother that his parents hated, because during the story you find out that his parents basically really liked his older brother, but really didn't like him, and they would put him in like the dungeons essentially and not give him dinner and stuff like that. But it was always his older brother and his butler Jan that would help him out. And Jan is still with him in this route. He is always looking after Mathis. It's kind of cute seeing their relationship, and Jan is so cute that I wanted him to be the ally, if I'm to be completely honest. But anyway, enough of that. But as a result of that, he really struggles in many ways, and he struggles even more now because he feels like he doesn't have a life purpose. And so Jan basically seeks help from Ceres. He basically says, can you work as like a maid at the mansion, and maybe you can help Mathis get out of his shell again. And she's like, well, okay, fine. Particularly because I think Jan really liked how good her cooking was, and he feels like her cooking's going to help Mathis a little bit because it'll make Mathis happy and all of that. So then she starts working at their mansion, and obviously during this she gradually gets to know Mathis, and you know, finds out that he's writing like a book, and as they get to know each other, what it turns out to be is that she ends up helping Mathis gradually come up with ideas to write his book, and it's all very sweet. Now, oh boy, about midway through the route, you're just sort of like, oh, what's going on? Because whenever Mathis gets any information or something reminds him of his brother's death and therefore revenge, his personality changes like that, and he becomes this crazy, violent, I don't even, initially I thought he had split personality disorder or something, because that switch and you know, that combined with dungeons, I thought maybe he's ended up with split personality because of the horrible treatment he received as a child. But then it wasn't only the two personalities, there was like, he would start showing other personalities, and so I was like, okay, maybe he has multiple personality disorder. But oh no, the truth was a lot worse than that, and unrealistic, obviously, but that's what makes it great. what it turns out to be. And I've basically gone straight to what happens at the end now. But what you find out after watching him go through all of this different chaotic behaviour is that Jan was actually the older brother this entire time. And people knew that he was the older brother, but he managed to hide it from Mathis somehow. And the butler Jan doesn't exist. It's just there was this son of this rich family, and he was good at everything, and he was the only child, and there was no butler. He was the only child. He didn't have a brother all this time. And you're probably sitting there confused, like, what do you mean, who's Mathis then? I felt the same way, but you find out that Mathis is a homunculus, or a product of Jan's experiments. Because what happened is Jan, when he was, you know, perfectly ordinary and nothing was wrong with him, and he was the only child, he had fallen in love with this woman. However, this woman used to be a prostitute, and she got lucky. She encountered Jan. Jan fell madly in love with her, and then he decided to marry her. So she's a prostitute that became very lucky. Now, unfortunately, another one of these prostitutes, because they're quite common in this game, actually, they often come up. But this prostitute, another one, felt jealous of what was her name? I think she's called Rosalie. So this other prostitute became very jealous of Rosalie and stabbed her to death, despite her having a child, and because she was pregnant. And this prostitute basically ends up murdering her and also the child in her belly. And Jan is just like, you know, he's distraught. He doesn't know how to handle it, especially because they were in love. They had agreed not to become a reliver, so she wasn't registered, her memory wasn't registered, there was no clone of her, so, you know, she was just dead, gone, bye-bye. And so Jan decides to go on this mission that he's going to create another Rosalie, but who is able to love and will love him. And now the issue is, and this is where it gets technical, is you can get memories of other people, but you can't necessarily place them on the clone of someone else, because the memories they don't quite fit that, like, person's genetics and DNA and cells. Now, like, remember, this is sci-fi, so it's not real science. But now, however, there is one exception to this rule. If you get stem cells, so, you know, like the bundle of cells before the baby becomes a baby, if you get those cells and then put the memory on the growth of these cells, then that memory actually is able to be retained in these bundle of cells that then grow up to be a human. So Jan, understanding this, decided to take that to his advantage and use it. Now, where do we get stem cells from that can turn into any cell in the body? Oh, of course, babies and pregnant women. So throughout this whole route, you kind of have this issue that Celeste and the other characters are trying to solve, which is this disappearances of prostitutes. And there was this rumor going around that if you go to the coast with a bottle with lots of flowers in it and wait there, a mysterious man on a boat will take you away to a country outside of this one, and you'll live a happy life. Like, this was a rumor that was going around, and a lot of pregnant prostitutes with that glimmer of hope ended up going to the coast and then would disappear. Now, what had actually happened was that Jan had spread these rumors, and it was Jan that was kidnapping and killing these prostitutes to take the stem cells within the fetus in their stomach. Yeah, I know, it's so grotesque, like I don't even. And what he did was he took those stem cells and grew Mathis out of them and downloaded all sorts of memories onto Mathis, so that Mathis truly believed that he was born to this family, but he was disliked by his parents and all of this. and made him, you know, an introverted personality so that he wouldn't want to go out because Jan didn't want his neighbours to be a bit suspicious of all this. So you find out that Mathis was not actually a person all this time, but he was this humanoid being, I guess, that was created artificially. And it's really tragic because this whole time he thought that this older brother was a great guy, you know, his hero. And it turns out that he didn't have this older brother, he didn't have a butler, he didn't have a family because he was created. And this older brother he thought was great turned out to be Jan, this crazy person, because by this point you notice that he's gone crazy. And yeah, it's really sad. And towards the end of the route, what happens is that Jan has discovered, because the final experiment involving Mathis was to see if he was able to fall in love. And Jan could clearly see that Mathis had fallen in love with Celis, and their love for each other was so strong. Jean thought, okay, but we need to repeat this several times to make sure that this technology works, and you know, it can make that person fall in love or whatever. Bearing in mind that this whole thing, the corpse of Rosalie, is just there inside this case. It's weird because she's still, you know, has her skin and looks like a human. She hasn't rotted yet, but she's kept stored in this like glass thing. But anyway, I just had to add that because I thought it was creepy. But because he wanted to repeat this experiment almost and discover who Mathis, like whether Mathis or this homunculus, he keeps on referring to him, can fall in love, what he does is every night he attaches him to this thing and then re-downloads a different person's memory and then sees whether Celis is able to make him fall in love with her again. And it's really messed up because he keeps on choosing personalities of people who are like really abusive or really horrible. Like one was a person that, like, sort of a memory and personality of a man that can't stop abusing people because of a horrible past, and yeah, he beats Celis up every now and then, and it's really horrible. I can't remember all the different personalities, but the final one was the worst. Now the issue was that every time Jan downloaded memories and a personality onto Mathis, he would keep on still falling in love with Celis. And for some reason, this really bothered Jean. Like, he was getting really irritated by it. And I feel like perhaps Jean was feeling irritated by it because he would look at, you know, these two who he almost doesn't want falling in love. Like, maybe he feels some jealousy because he doesn't have that person he fell in love with anymore. But these two keep on falling in love over and over again, no matter how horrible a personality Jean chooses for Mathis to, you know, have. And I think it really irritates him and maybe makes Jean a bit jealous, because the final memories and personality he chooses to download onto Mathis is that of a serial killer. And it's of a serial killer who is obsessed with killing women. Like, he gains pleasure from killing women. And oh dear God, it got so bloody, honestly. Celis doesn't die, by the way. The bad ending wasn't like that, because if it was, I would have been like, is this it? I know that sounds really cold-hearted, but whenever bad endings have like just someone die, it doesn't do it for me. I need some like real storytelling. But anyway, now Mathis turns into a guy that can't help but kill women. And he's like slashing at Celis and like cuts her in so many ways because he enjoys watching her in pain, like being killed essentially. And I think in the end, I can't remember exactly, but he kind of stops himself almost and kind of starts crying, saying he doesn't want to kill her. And you see the CG of it, and it's sad. It's really sad. And you know, you've got this boy, 17-year-old boy, who was artificially made and is made to go through all these different personalities and struggles through it. And even in this horrible, you know, serial killer's sort of mentality, he still manages to fall in love, or makes his other self come out, or whatever it was, to stop harming her and fall in love. And I think this was like the final thing. And so again, there are two despair or bad endings. One is that Celeste manages to escape, because at the end you choose whether to, well actually no, you make choices, and then it ends up that Jean comes in and Celeste manages to either escape the room or she doesn't. Now, if Celeste manages to escape, and this is the non-CG ending, she doesn't manage to escape the manor, she just manages to get out of the dungeon. And then what happens is Jean goes, oh, if Mathis also has the motivation I do, then this work in progress will be, you know, handled much quicker. And so he kills Celeste and puts her also in this weird like canister. Mathis wakes up and sees that his, you know, true love is now dead, and the only way to recover her is to help with Jean's experiments. And it pans to this scene where they tell the tale of this mysterious boat man who comes to collect you and can take you to another country. And then instead of it being Jean, you see Mathis coming to collect these women. And he kind of says, oh, did you know that there are two boatsmen who come and collect those who have this dream? And it kind of shows like how now Mathis is helping Jean out with this experiment. And I think it really affected me because the way they told the story was so beautiful. And again, it's funny, I actually preferred that ending over the CG ending. Now the CG ending is that she doesn't escape, she chooses not to escape and stay with Mathis. And basically what happens is, it's really weird, what happens is Jean puts like his memories and his personality on to Mathis. So Mathis keeps on referring to Celeste as Rosalie, and they get married, and Celeste just accepts this. She goes, this is still Mathis. It's Mathis. It's not Mathis, but it's still Mathis. Yes, he has the memories of Jean and thinks that I'm Rosalie, and it hurts me. However, I still accept Mathis for that, you know, for who he is, because she's so in love with him. And it's this CG where they're dancing almost. Oh, that was another, you know, bad one. Because you kind of think, it kind of made me think, I guess Jean all this time was a bit jealous of them, and then I guess put his image onto Mathis, and then made his dream come true in that sense. And so yeah, my impression went from I don't really like this character, he's too young looking, he's not my type, to that was an interesting route. I haven't come across anything like that in terms of, I mean, oh, it's so grotesque. Can you imagine killing, and I don't want you to imagine this, but the thought of some murderer killing pregnant women to utilize their stem cells, that's disgusting. That's disgusting behavior, and it really made me feel a bit sick. And but I admire that an Otome game was able to make me feel this sick, because, you know, usually they don't go into that much detail. And yeah, no, I just, it was good. I do like messed up things, but both Luca and Mathis Route, they were both like watching a horror movie, that's for sure. And I don't know, I guess my impression of Mathis also changed, because he went from this character that I didn't think I'd be into to this really interesting character with all these different personalities. I know it's horrible because all those personalities ultimately you learn isn't his, but he became this interesting character. And, you know, this game, I'm no longer playing it for the romance by this point. I'm just like playing it to see what the hell happens, because oh my gosh, with Nuka's route being what it was, and then Mathis's route being even more grotesque than I had thought it would be, I'm just kind of like, what? This has never happened to me before. Whenever I play an Otome game, I'm craving romance. If there's no romance, I feel a little bit sad. But with this one, I'm no longer focusing on romance or like the relationship between the two. Frankly, I don't care about the relationship of the two. I'm just curious to learn about this character and the life that they're going through and what despair they're going to end up in. And it's strange. Honestly, it's strange because that has never happened to me. And so far this game is, yeah, it's like in my top, because it's like reading a dark fairy tale and it's just so up my street that, oh boy, I swear after every one of these videos I'm like, you know, I know it's messed up and you guys are probably like, Luli, what is wrong with you? How can you find this like fun to play? You don't understand. I like messed up things. I don't know why. It's just, it's interesting. And this one was especially interesting because it was like the most messed up thing I've come across. Like, it's just technically as well as emotionally grotesque, and they don't, and the amazing thing is they don't show it in CGs necessarily. It's just the way they explain it all is so grotesque, and the timing in which you find out, you kind of feel yourself go, oh my dear God, really? That happened? Because there was a bit of a build-up, but then it's just so extreme. Like, part of me felt like maybe Jan's hiding something, because you kind of see he bumps into someone and drops a locket, and then there's like a portrait or picture of Rosalie. And then later you find out that the picture's actually of dead Rosalie, because he doesn't have a picture of her when she's alive, and cameras are really, basically, you shouldn't have them because they're rare and they only come from outside the country and all this. But you discover that he's got a picture of his dead wife in his in a locket that he has, and it just, and you start thinking like, there's something interesting and something that's hidden in Jan's like personality, and it's just, he's hiding something. And yes, of course, he turns out to be this crazy, love-driven, mad, kind of scientist-like character, and yeah, no, I don't know, I have nothing more to say. I just, it was a good route. I don't think the other routes are gonna be able to you know, be as good as this one. Like, I enjoyed Yuka, but this one was a whole different level. Now, Yuka is still my favorite character. Mathis is unlikely to become my favorite character because he's just so cutesy. However, in terms of routes, so far I think his route was the most interesting and it went by really quickly. But anyway, I shall leave it there instead of continuously rambling on about how grotesque that route was. As always, thank you very much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and hopefully, maybe I'll see you in the next of this installment of Otome Diaries for Virche, where I will be speaking about Shuuen. But anyway, bye!